Welcome to another episode, a very interesting episode of Entrepreneurs in Fuego. We're documenting the journey of incredible entrepreneurs such as Lezli Engleking. Focus, standards, foundation of Cannabis United Standards.
Unified, but yes.
Unified standards.
Yep.
Explain to us what this all means.
So FOCUS is an international third-party nonprofit.
Yeah.
We develop cannabis-specific standards for the cannabis industry and then third-party certification. So we work directly with business owners, we work with state agencies and federal agencies. Because cannabis has been illegal and Schedule I for so long, the Food and Drug Administration and Department of Health and Human Services have stepped out of their normal role. So in anything sort of food, drug, pharmaceutical, device related, the FDA generally creates good manufacturing practice guidelines. So they're basically telling business owners how to make sure that they can produce a quality, safe, consistent product. But because it's Schedule I, the FDA hasn't done that. And so FOCUS has stepped in that gap to fill it. So we develop standards in the form of good manufacturing, good agriculture, good laboratory practices, and then we help business owners meet those standards and certify them.
And I was going to say, so if I'm a business owner or an entrepreneur looking to go into the cannabis business, then you assist in providing the standards, the guides, cultivation,
exactly,
norms, et cetera,
yeah,
for the industry.
And any business, really. I mean, existing businesses as well, but certainly it's a huge benefit to a company that's getting started because they're going to put all their processes and procedures in place the right way initially. They're going to build out their facility in a manner that's efficient and effective so that it flows within the standard and they're able to sort of control risks in each area.
How did you see the need, though, for this organization to exist? I mean, was there a void? Was there a chasm or a hole there that there wasn't any liaison between the government and that's right, and the government and the industry itself, or the entrepreneurs that were getting into the industry, that you had to step in and to kind of say, all right, we're a nonprofit, we're going to just try to make sense out of everything that is going on here, from legislation to cultivation to guidelines, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, so I have a background in pharmaceuticals. I worked for Eli Lilly for 13 years, and I was in mental health in the nonprofit world before that. I was asked in 2010, when Arizona legalized cannabis for medical use, to be the executive director on applications that they were submitting, some friends of mine. And at first I said, no, I don't know anything about cannabis, right? That's not my area of expertise. But they were terrific and sent me a ton of information about the medical benefits and how much this is changing people's lives. And I had just quit my other job. I was taking a 6-month sabbatical, and I thought, well, I'm kind of interested. I'll see. Yeah. So in the end, I'm very, very thankful that I made that decision and that they encouraged me to, with all the data they sent and whatnot. We opened the first vertically integrated license in Phoenix. Yep. And so I was the executive director of that. I was also the brand director, and we went on to open 4 more licenses under that same brand in the next couple of years. As we did that, we grew incredibly fast, right? We went from 7 employees to 100 employees in a matter of months. And with that growth, we were so busy that we didn't have time to think about standards. We didn't have employee manuals. We didn't have employee training. And we didn't have processes and procedures that were documented so that if something went wrong, it wouldn't go wrong again. So there was this big need for this. So all the regulations in this industry, I mean, it's a highly regulated industry, one of the highest, but they address sort of who, what, when, where, and why. Like who can buy cannabis, for what condition, from who, when, and that sort of thing. They don't do anything to protect public health and safety. Our mission of FOCUS is to protect public health, consumer safety, and safeguard the environment.
Some people would find that paradoxical, particularly some of the local groups here in Arizona that for ethical reasons may say, you know what, we don't want this thing because of our mission, because of our, and there's some large groups, in fact, that are opposing.
They're absolutely
November 8th, 2016, there is a vote to make marijuana, recreational marijuana, legal here in the state of Arizona. So there's a lot of opposition. In fact, businesses are now jumping on the bandwagon saying, you know what, we don't want that here because how if it is recreational, if it is legal, and if some of our drivers say for a company that is a transportation company or whatnot, or delivery company, that they're going to say, well, we need to test you today. Wait a minute, I just had a little recreational marijuana.
And it's a bigger issue too, because the way that cannabis works in the blood stream, it lasts a lot longer. It's not like alcohol where it goes away in a matter of hours. It's a matter of days and months. So yeah, it is. There's definitely controversy around it still.
There's a lot of controversy around that, but the way that you see yourselves, though, is more of as an information depository to kind of dispel some of the myths also about.
Right. I was going to say that a lot of that controversy and the people, the businesses, the organizations that are sort of anti-cannabis legalization, even for medical purposes, let alone for adult use.
Sure.
A lot of that is just stigma-based. It's fear-based information because of what the situation has been with prohibition of cannabis for the last, 60, 70, 80 years. It's focus. One of the most important things about who we are is that we're unbiased, we're third party, we're not an advocacy organization, we do not advocate for the legalization of cannabis on any level, medical or others. We are here to promote legitimization. And as it shows nowadays, there's 50 states that now have medical cannabis laws in place.
Right.
After November 8th, there will be many, many more. It's here. It's a reality that we have to deal with. And so our goal is to simply make that safe. We want to protect the end users, the public that doesn't have anything to do with it. We want to protect the patients that are using it as medicine, and we want to protect the consumers that are using it for adult use, because the last thing we want to see is somebody using cannabis recreationally turn into a patient because the cannabis wasn't safe that they were using.
Lezli, Engleking, FOCUS standards, Foundation of Cannabis Unified Standards. Now, this is all happening on the state level.
It is. So, interestingly, our business model, when I sat down to do this, I knew I had a good background with my experience in pharma and my experience in the cannabis industry, but I didn't know how to develop standards, and I certainly didn't know how to create a company that develops standards. That's just not my background. So I did a lot of research in looking into creating my business plan, and I came across an organization called CARF. It's CARF, so Commission on Accreditation of Rehabilitation Facilities. And the reason it's pertinent to this discussion, in the 80s, when the heroin epidemic swept throughout the United States, methadone clinics had popped up in response to treat the addiction. They were all over the country in different states and all working under different state, city, and county guidelines. So the federal government took a look at this and said, whoa, we've got to do something to protect the integrity of what's happening in these clinics and assure that they're providing good care and the right dosage and that sort of thing. So they released a request for proposal for somebody to develop voluntary consensus standards, which are the only type of standards that are suitable for adoption into regulation or for accreditation internationally, and then a third-party certification platform behind that. So when I heard that, I thought, gosh, that sounds a lot like cannabis in this country, right? We're in every different state with different regs. There's no consistency. It places a huge burden on the businesses as well as the patients and consumers. That sounds like a great model for us. CARF is the organization that answered and won that RFP from the federal government. And so what I did when I was developing my plan was I actually reached out to them and talked to some people that were on the committee that answered that RFP and developed the methadone standards and certification platform. So our business model is really to provide the federal government sort of a plug-and-play system when they're ready to regulate this. But in the interim, we work with states to help them improve their programs, and we work directly with business owners who want to assure, safe, consistent quality products, who want to show that, they've protected all their risks and liabilities, that they want to differentiate themselves from the competitors and that sort of thing.
And again, the paradox is that, all right, so you have all the state regulations, the standards, et cetera, that have been developed, but federally, the government can come in and shut down the business, right? I mean, that's kind of technically or legally.
Yes and no. So James Cole from the Department of Justice wrote three. There was first an Ogden memo, and then there's been 3 Cole memos. And the latest Cole memo specifically has eight qualities that, as long as you are not doing any of these 8 things, the federal government will not come in and interrupt state programs. So all of them have to do with public health and safety, consumer safety, that sort of thing.
But even though that is happening, you still cannot bank.
You cannot bank. Banking is a very big issue. In fact, our standards right now, the 8 that we've launched with is cultivation, retail, extraction, infused products, laboratory, sustainability, security, and packaging and labeling. But as we move forward this year, later towards the end of the year, we have committees that are going to convene to develop advertising and marketing standards, banking/finance standards, insurance standards, and patient care or medical standards to help guide physicians and people treating patients with cannabis, and then also research.
Very, very quickly, when you're reading all these tea leaves, do you think that at some point rather sooner rather than later, that the federal government is going to come in and say, all right, everybody is...
Oh, yeah. And I'm certainly not going to be the one to predict when, because I wouldn't.
But the tide is too strong.
But I can tell
they can't.
Yeah, we're past that point. Cannabis is here to stay in this country, and other countries are legalizing it all over the world. Actually, one of my employees is in Costa Rica right now, speaking on behalf of FOCUS, and he, after the first day of the conference yesterday, the president of Costa Rica announced that they were going to bypass all the debate and move the cannabis initiative to the Congress on Monday directly.
That's correct. What would you say to somebody that said, "Oh, this is just a start," and then the next thing we know, we're going to start legalizing heroin, and we're going to start legalizing all these other opiates and stuff?
It's a common question. It's really not. First of all, part of that stigma that we talked about earlier is one of the beliefs that this is a gateway drug. All data shows that is not true, and there's very good, solid data to show that. The other thing is,
I should delete my Reefer Madness video.
It's up to you. But if you want to do some good to actually put some real information out there, I would think that would be a great idea. But yeah, and then the other part of that is. Oh gosh, I'm sorry, I lost what we were talking about. I got stuck on Reefer Madness.
we're talking about the federalization, and actually some of the opposition saying that, wait a minute, we're just going to, this marijuana is just a start, and then the next thing you know, we're going to have to start legalizing all these other gateway drugs.
Cannabis has been around forever as a medicine. In this country, for sure, but globally. I mean, even in ancient, Chinese medicine, Indian. I mean, it's a plant. It's natural. It's very, very low risk. The side effects that you can experience from using cannabis are uncomfortable, certainly, if you experience some. Most people don't, but they're also not deadly. And that's a very big difference than a lot of the pharmaceuticals that have, you take so many and you're in an overdose mode, or the opioids, which is a crisis in this country, right? And we've found in the states that have legalized cannabis for medical use, the overdose rate for opioids has reduced 25% across the board. And that's a huge deal when you think about, wow, we've got chronic pain's one of the biggest problems in the United States, right? So it makes a difference.
I would guess your favorite band is the Doobie Brothers. I'm just messing with you. It's mine, man!
Not the Grateful Dead or Willie Nelson.
No, the Doobie Brothers. With that, we're out.
Welcome to the remix. Prestige.